I broke the chain of command, or so said the laminated HR poster taped in the break room beside the microwave that smelled like burnt popcorn and crushed ambition. My alleged sin, framed in corporate Helvetica, was listed under Lessons in Integrity. But rewind 48 hours, back when I was still Sarah Langford, Senior Project Coordinator at Halcyon Dynamics, unofficial fixer of all things broken, especially things my director, Tracy Monroe, didn't want to touch. Tracy loved two things: buzzwords and plausible deniability. When our biggest client, a biotech firm with enough lawyers to fill a stadium, asked a simple question about their renewal package, she disappeared behind a wall of Slack statuses that read Deep Focus and Strategic Review. Translation: she was on LinkedIn updating her open-to-work settings again. I'd been handling 90% of the client communication anyway. Their compliance director trusted me more than Tracy, and when they emailed asking whether our renewal pricing included regional compliance modules, I answered. 3 sentences, polite and clear, referencing the right documentation. It wasn't rebellion, it was competence. But competence is a dangerous thing in a company run by egos. I hit send at 4:48 p.m. and exhaled. By 5:15, the client replied, "Thanks, Sarah. That clarifies everything. No drama, no issue. Just a job done right." The next morning, HR called me in like I'd set fire to the server room. Janice, our HR manager, tight smile, tighter bun, waited with a folder already open. "Sarah, it's been brought to our attention you engaged in unauthorized client communication," she began, voice syrupy with rehearsed sympathy. "Specifically bypassing your director regarding client Lawson Therapeutics." I blinked. "You mean the pricing clarification?" She nodded. "Per your director, you acted outside approved channels." Tracy sat beside her, arms crossed, eyes gleaming with self-satisfaction. I wanted to laugh. This was about her ego, not policy. She couldn't stand that I'd solved a problem before she could schedule a meeting about it. "Effective immediately," Janice continued, sliding a single sheet across the table. "Your employment is terminated. No severance, just like that. No warning, no performance discussion. Gone." The laminated poster announcing my downfall was already being printed before I even packed my mug. "Terminated for violating communication protocols," it said under my blurred photo. Tracy's masterpiece of public humiliation. I walked out without tears, without a word, past desks where people suddenly remembered to type. My monitor was already logged out, my Slack deactivated, my name erased like I'd never existed. The Florida sun hit hard as I stepped into the parking lot, bag over my shoulder, heartbeat steady. Anger hadn't arrived yet, just static. The kind that hums before a storm. That night, over a microwaved burrito and a half-empty glass of wine, I replayed everything. The email wasn't reckless or insubordinate. It was factual, professional, boring even. So why did they fire me so fast, without process, without even a formal report? The next morning, as I sat staring at the wall, my phone buzzed. A message on LinkedIn. "Hi, Sarah," it read. "Just confirming the pricing clarification you sent to our team. Was that your final communication?" It was from Darren Hughes, Associate Counsel at Lawson Therapeutics. I typed back, "Yes, sent 4:48 p.m., Friday." 3 dots appeared. Then, "Thought so. Please don't delete it." 6 words that froze me mid-sip. Don't delete it? Why? My mind started rewinding, connecting dots I hadn't known existed. That email, my email, had triggered something, and if a corporate lawyer was telling me to keep it, it meant the fallout hadn't even started yet. I must have reread that message 20 times. Please don't delete it. The words hit different when they came from a lawyer, calm, deliberate, and laced with quiet urgency. I wasn't scared, not exactly, but something low in my chest started to hum, the way fluorescent lights buzz before they flicker out. I pulled up the sent copy of my email again. It was textbook professionalism. Nothing risky, nothing emotional. Just a simple confirmation that renewal pricing included regional compliance modules. It even cited our internal documentation. I could have taught a seminar on proper client communication with that message. So why did it suddenly matter? By noon, curiosity had shoved grief aside. I opened my laptop, scrolled through old company archives, and found Lawson Therapeutics' previous renewal cycle buried in the system. A 3-year contract, last amended under our founder, Thomas Hale. He'd retired 2 years ago under strategic succession, which everyone knew meant the board forced him out. He'd been the kind of leader who read contracts himself, annotated them in red pen, and treated every clause like gospel. Tracy hated that. She called it legacy paranoia. I called it integrity. The deeper I dug, the more uneasy I felt. I found one internal memo from Hale himself, dated just before his retirement, referencing Lawson as a client with legal teeth. The note ended with a warning. Never delay compliance confirmation. They'll test you once, and only once. Suddenly, the timing of my firing didn't look like coincidence. It looked like containment. Someone had panicked, and that someone was probably sitting in a corner office polishing their excuse. I was still staring at my screen when another email appeared in my inbox, this time from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, Legacy Holdings Inquiry. Confidential. I hesitated, then clicked. Ms. Langford, it began. You may be aware of recent developments concerning your termination. We have reason to believe your correspondence with Lawson Therapeutics has activated a clause of significance. Please preserve all related communications. You are requested to attend the upcoming company-wide meeting on Monday as an observer under the Legacy Oversight Provision. Do not speak unless prompted. It was signed, Elliot Chambers, Transitional Counsel on behalf of the Hale Trust. My breath caught. The Hale Trust, as in Thomas Hale, the founder. The man who built Halcyon from a garage in Tampa and supposedly retired to some vineyard in Oregon. I hadn't heard that name in 2 years, and suddenly it was attached to an email telling me I'd triggered a clause of significance. I leaned back, pulse thudding. I didn't know what legacy oversight meant, but it sounded like something above HR's pay grade. I searched through old onboarding decks, clicking through every folder that hadn't been wiped yet. Then I found it, in a dusty PowerPoint labeled Client Renewals 2019, on slide 47, buried in the fine print. In the event of executive obstruction or operational delay affecting Lawson Therapeutics, account oversight reverts to the Founders Trust per Clause 47A. Clause 47A. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just a policy. It was a detonator. The kind of clause companies forget exists until someone accidentally trips it. I closed my laptop and stared out the window, the Florida sun bleaching the blinds into strips of white light. Tracy hadn't fired me because I broke protocol. She fired me because my email had done something hers didn't. It met the client's deadline, and now the founder's old clause was alive again. By Sunday night, I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. The kind of focus that comes when you realize the board thinks you're a pawn, but you've just found the rule book they forgot to burn. On Monday morning, I put on my navy blazer, the one I used to save for client pitches, and walked through Halcyon's glass doors as a guest observer. My badge was deactivated, but security was waiting. They escorted me past reception without a word. The silence was surgical. Every head that turned pretended not to. By the time we reached the executive conference room, the air was thick with nerves and perfume. Tracy was already there, posture sharp, smile brittle. She didn't greet me. She didn't have to. The look in her eyes said it all. Why are you here? She was about to find out. The conference room looked smaller than I remembered, maybe because half the company's power players were crammed inside, pretending not to sweat. The table gleamed under two bright LEDs, the kind of artificial light that made everyone look guilty. I took the seat in the back that security motioned to, just close enough to see everything, but far enough to feel invisible again. Tracy sat near the front in a slate gray blazer that matched her ambition, 2 sizes too tight and tailored for self-importance. Her phone was face down, her expression neutral, but I could see the twitch in her jaw, the one she got when she couldn't control the narrative. Beside her was Greg Morton, the CEO, a man who smiled like every word was pre-approved by PR. The projector hummed to life, displaying the title slide, Client Confidence and Communication Integrity, a Review. My name wasn't on it, not yet. A hush settled as the doors opened again. A tall man in a navy suit and thin-framed glasses entered, carrying a binder thick enough to double as a weapon. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't have to. He radiated authority, the kind that doesn't ask for permission. "Good morning," he said, setting his binder down. "I'm Daniel Rhodes, General Counsel representing Lawson Therapeutics." The air shifted. He clicked the remote, and the slide changed to an email timeline. 2 entries appeared side by side. My email, sent Friday, 4:48 p.m., received and acknowledged, and Tracy's, sent Tuesday, 11:14 a.m., no acknowledgement. One was highlighted in blue, the other in red. The silence was immediate, thick enough to choke on. Rhodes adjusted his glasses and spoke with the precision of a scalpel. 3 years ago, during your founder's tenure, Lawson Therapeutics amended its master service agreement with Halcyon Dynamics. Within that amendment is Clause 47A, an operational reversion clause. It stipulates that if a client experiences material obstruction or delayed compliance communication, oversight reverts to the founder's trust. A collective murmur rippled through the room. The CEO shifted, clearing his throat, but Rhodes didn't pause. The clause was designed to protect client relationships from internal mismanagement. In this case, he gestured toward the screen. Your company's authorized leadership failed to meet response requirements. Ms. Langford's communication, while unauthorized internally, met every external condition. He flipped a page in his binder. That action triggered Clause 47A automatically. The words hung there like thunder waiting for lightning. Tracy's face drained of color. "That's not possible," she said quickly, voice cracking just enough to betray her. She wasn't approved to respond. It wasn't official. Rhodes didn't even look at her. Intent doesn't override outcome. The contract specifies response time, not title. The client's inquiry was answered within compliance thresholds. Therefore, per Clause 47A, subsection B, the Hale Trust now retains operational control of the Lawson account. A gasp fluttered from someone near the end of the table. Morton's smile vanished. "You're saying we lost the account?" he stammered. Rhodes corrected him calmly. "You lost control of it." The distinction hit harder than any accusation. "Effective this morning," Rhodes continued, "all Lawson access credentials, data governance permissions, and renewal negotiations fall under the Hale Trust." Then he paused, eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. The trust also designates a transitional liaison until full alignment is reestablished. My stomach tightened as he said my name. Sarah Langford. Chairs creaked, eyes turned. The sound of collective disbelief was almost physical. I didn't move. I just breathed. Slowly, evenly. Tracy looked like she'd swallowed a shard of glass. "She's not qualified for that," she spat, desperate now. "She was fired." Rhodes finally met her gaze, expression flat. "Yes, for doing her job correctly." Then he shut his binder with a sound like a verdict. The room fell silent except for the faint buzz of the projector. Somewhere behind me, someone muttered, "Holy hell." I didn't look around. I didn't need to. The truth was already rewriting itself on every face in that room. For a full 10 seconds, no one breathed. The projector hummed, frozen on the slide with my name, like the building itself was holding its breath. I sat still, spine straight, pulse steady. The weight of the room pressing down but not crushing me this time. Across the table, Tracy blinked fast, trying to collect herself. "There must be some mistake," she said, her voice trembling between outrage and fear. "That clause 47A, it hasn't been active since Hale retired. It can't just reactivate." Rhodes adjusted his glasses, unbothered. "The clause doesn't require activation. It's perpetual unless rescinded by the founder or his legal trust." Neither occurred. Therefore, the trigger stands. The CEO, Greg Morton, rubbed his temples like the words were physically painful. "So, what does this mean exactly? That our founder's trust controls the account?" "Correct," Rhodes replied. "The Hale Trust holds oversight for all compliance, renewal, and client governance related to Lawson Therapeutics." He turned toward Morton, and by extension, Ms. Langford, acting as the Trust's appointed liaison, has temporary authority in all corresponding matters. The murmuring returned, louder this time, like static. I could feel the heat of eyes on me, colleagues I'd sat beside for years suddenly looking like they'd seen a ghost. I wasn't supposed to be here, not at the table, not in the building, and definitely not as someone with authority. But there I was, calm, deliberate, and very much alive in the company that had tried to erase me. Morton leaned back in his chair, face pale. "You're saying one email, cost us control of a multi-million-dollar account?" Rhodes didn't flinch. "No, Mr. Morton. Negligence did." The email merely revealed it. A few heads turned sharply toward Tracy. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She looked at the CEO, then at HR, as if someone might still bail her out. No one did. "The Trust will be conducting an internal ethics review," Rhodes continued, "specifically regarding retaliatory actions taken following Ms. Langford's termination. The founder was informed of the situation on Friday and will join remotely later today." The words landed like thunder. The founder. The room went still again. Thomas Hale hadn't been seen in a boardroom since his retirement. His name still hung on a plaque in the lobby, but it had become more legend than presence. I'd almost forgotten what his voice sounded like. Rhodes gathered his papers with calm precision. "Until further notice, the Lawson account is frozen for executive access. Ms. Langford, you will coordinate directly with our compliance department on transition protocol." The sound of my name coming from a lawyer's mouth in that tone, professional, respectful, final, hit like oxygen after drowning. Morton's voice cracked. This is unprecedented." "No," Rhodes said. "It's contractual." Then he handed a sealed envelope to Morton and nodded. "The Trust expects full cooperation." He turned to leave but paused at the doorway. "And for what it's worth," he added, Ms. Langford's response probably saved this company from a lawsuit. The door clicked shut behind him, and the silence that followed wasn't confusion anymore. It was fear. Tracy was still standing, colorless, hands trembling slightly. Her power had evaporated in real time, replaced by the kind of dread that only comes when you realize the story you wrote about someone has turned on you. I didn't gloat. I didn't speak. I just watched her the way she'd watched me in that HR office. Cold, composed, and already gone. Morton exhaled heavily, then turned toward me. "You'll remain for the transition meeting," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. "Security will stay present." I nodded once. As he stood to leave, I noticed his hand shake slightly when he reached for his water glass. It wasn't the caffeine. It was the beginning of consequence. Security didn't move from the wall, but their presence changed everything. They weren't there to intimidate me. They were there to make sure no one else tried to leave. The CEO sank back into his chair like gravity had suddenly doubled, flipping open the envelope Rhodes had given him. Pages rustled, sharp and deliberate. The air in the room had the heaviness of static right before a lightning strike. I just sat there, watching the ripple effect of truth crawl across every face. Clause 47A, subsection B, Morton read aloud quietly, stipulates that if a non-authorized liaison remedies a client obstruction before formal leadership response, the Founders Trust may reassign liaison authority without further approval. His voice cracked on reassign. He didn't need to look up to know exactly what that meant. Across from him, Tracy clutched her pen like a lifeline. "This can't stand," she said. "It's absurd. We can't lose control of a federal client account because some buried clause from a decade ago magically resurrects itself." Her tone was brittle, desperate. The legal counsel seated in the corner, David Lynn, Halcyon's internal attorney, spoke for the first time, voice thin. "Actually, it's very much alive. I've reviewed the document. The clause was never sunsetted. It's binding under corporate trust law." The CEO froze. "You're serious?" David nodded. "Very." Tracy laughed once, short and high, the sound of denial breaking. "So what now? We let her—" She gestured at me like the word burned. "Run our client communications? Sit in meetings she's not qualified for?" David didn't look at her. "It's not a choice. The trust now holds operational authority. If we resist, we breach contract." Morton dropped the pages, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "So we play along." He didn't sound convinced. I could almost feel his mind spinning, calculating optics, containment, survival. It was strange watching him, the same man who'd smiled for photo ops beside the founder's portrait, now realizing the ghost in that frame still owned the building. The conference doors opened again, and a voice from the doorway said, "You don't have to play along. You just have to listen." Everyone turned. The wall screen flickered to life, and there he was, Thomas Hale, founder, myth, and apparently still very much alive. His hair was grayer, his voice slower, but it carried the same quiet authority that used to make entire departments straighten their posture. "Good morning," he said, calm as a surgeon before a cut. "I understand there's been confusion." He looked directly into the camera, then toward me. "Ms. Langford, I want to thank you. You upheld the client standard this company was built on. Service first, ego last." My throat tightened, but I held his gaze. "When I retired," Hale continued, "I left behind safeguards, protocols to ensure this place never lost sight of its purpose. Clause 47A was one of them. It was meant to protect the company from complacency, from leaders who confuse authority with value." His words landed like hammer strikes on Tracy's composure. She shifted in her seat, face stiff. Hale went on, voice calm but cutting. "I've reviewed the internal memos. The firing was retaliatory, not procedural. That's a violation of both our ethics charter and our federal compliance agreement. Effective immediately, the trust is reinstating oversight until further notice." Morton tried to interject. "Thomas, with all due respect—" "Respect," Hale interrupted softly, "is earned by action, not title." The line hung in the air like a blade. He nodded once toward me on the screen. "Ms. Langford, you'll continue in your role as transitional liaison. My counsel will coordinate directly. Everyone else, cooperate fully. And for those involved in the retaliation, an ethics review begins today." His gaze swept across the silent room one last time. "Legacy isn't a word for the lobby wall. It's a mirror. Look into it carefully." The feed cut. The room was silent except for the faint buzz of the projector cooling down. Tracy's face had gone sheet white. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. For a moment, nobody dared to move. The founder's words hung heavy in the air, pressing down on everyone like gravity itself. The fluorescent hum of the ceiling lights filled the silence until even that sounded deafening. Tracy's eyes darted toward Morton, desperate for rescue. The CEO just sat there, hollow, staring at the table like he could sink through it. "You heard him?" David Lynn finally said, breaking the stillness. His voice was steadier now, almost resigned. "The founder's directive overrides current leadership. It's binding. There's no appeal process." Morton nodded slowly, lips pressed tight. Then his eyes flicked toward me. "Ms. Langford," he said, voice low but clear. "You'll remain for the transition. The trust has reinstated your access as of this morning." I checked my phone. An automated notification had just popped up. "Access restored. Halcyon Dynamics Systems. Role: Transitional Liaison." I almost laughed, not from humor, but from the sheer absurdity of it all. 1 week ago, they'd paraded me out of this building like a cautionary tale. Now the system itself was welcoming me back. Tracy stood abruptly, the scrape of her chair slicing through the tension. "This is insane," she hissed. "You're seriously letting her walk back in here and— What? Take my job?" No one answered. The 2 security officers at the wall shifted slightly but didn't move. Morton rubbed his forehead. "Tracy, sit down." "No," she snapped, voice cracking. "You all saw what she did. She went rogue. She undermined leadership. She made me look incompetent," I said quietly before I could stop myself. Every head turned. Her glare cut sharp enough to draw blood. "You think this makes you some kind of hero?" she spat. "You just got lucky." "No," I said, my voice calm. "I did my job." She looked around the room for backup, but the faces that once mirrored her smug confidence now looked anywhere but at her. The oxygen in her authority was gone. "Tracy," David said softly, "you might want to stop talking. The founder specifically mentioned retaliatory action. That review begins today." Her mouth opened, then closed. The color drained from her face. She slowly sat back down, trembling just slightly. Morton finally exhaled and looked to security. "Lock down the Lawson channels. Nobody outside this room touches them until the trust gives clearance." One of the guards nodded and spoke quietly into his earpiece. The other kept his eyes on Tracy. The rhythm of the moment felt surreal, like I was standing inside a slow-motion replay of my own execution. But this time, I was the one breathing. The head of finance, a quiet man named Eli Kim, cleared his throat. "With the founder reinstating oversight, does that mean we're back under legacy protocols?" David nodded. "Until the review concludes, yes. Hale Trust runs the client side. Internal ops report to both." Eli leaned back, rubbing his jaw. "That's going to make a lot of people nervous." "Good," I said. "They should be." Morton's head snapped toward me. Not angry, just startled. Maybe because it was the first time anyone had heard me speak with authority in that room. "The Lawson team was almost lost because we cared more about hierarchy than service," I continued. "The founder's not wrong. It wasn't about power. It was about the work. That's what saved the account." No one argued, because they couldn't. The truth had already walked in before I did. Outside the glass walls, employees were pretending not to notice the security guards, the tense faces, the closed blinds on a room that never closed its blinds. But word would spread. It always did. Halcyon Dynamics lived on gossip and glass reflections, and by the time this meeting ended, the reflection staring back at them wasn't the same woman they'd tried to erase. It was the one holding the door open for the reckoning they built themselves. The next few minutes moved like a dream wrapped in static. No one spoke, but every breath in that room carried meaning. You could feel careers collapsing in silence, the quiet implosion of ego meeting accountability. Morton leaned back, defeated. The founder's message had stripped away every excuse. David Lynn was still scrolling through the digital version of Clause 47A, lips moving silently as if confirming his own professional obituary. I stayed seated, hands folded. No satisfaction, no anger, just balance. The kind that arrives only when the noise finally stops. "We'll proceed with the transition," Morton said at last, voice flat. "The Hale Trust assumes oversight effective immediately. All directors will cooperate." "Tracy," he paused, his eyes cold now. "You'll surrender your system access to IT before leaving the building." The words hung like frost. Tracy blinked, her mouth trembling as she tried to form a defense. "Greg, please," she whispered. "You know how much I've done for this place." "Enough," Morton interrupted quietly. "This isn't a discussion." One of the security officers stepped forward, not aggressive, just efficient. Tracy's breath hitched. She looked from him to me, eyes wide, pleading, searching for some flicker of mercy. I gave her nothing, because this wasn't revenge. It was gravity. She stood slowly, clutching her tote bag like a shield, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked small. The kind of small that happens when someone realizes their entire empire was made of laminated posters and borrowed credit. As she walked toward the door, the room stayed utterly still. Not out of respect, out of recognition. Every person there had just seen what happens when you mistake control for competence. The door clicked shut behind her, and it was over. Morton rubbed his temples again. "All right," he said. "Phase 1, client reassignment and operational freeze." He looked to David. "Phase 2, ethics review." Then finally, he turned to me. "Phase 3, liaison directive. Ms. Langford, that's you." My name sounded different now. Not as a target, but as a fixture. I nodded once. Morton sighed. God help us. But he didn't mean it like a prayer. He meant it like an apology. From there, the rest moved mechanically. Teams received notifications. Access changed hands. Lawson Therapeutics oversight officially transferred under the Hale Trust by the time the projector cooled to black. My phone buzzed again. System update. Operational liaison. Active credentials restored. I let out a slow breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Around me, the senior staff avoided my eyes. Some looked ashamed. Others, relieved. A few, maybe the smart ones, looked curious, like they'd just watched a myth become a manual. I didn't speak again until Morton and David started packing their folders. "One more thing," I said. Both looked up. "You should take down the poster." Morton frowned. "Poster? The one in the break room," I said evenly. "The HR morality play. The one with my blurred photo." The corner of David's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "I'll see to it." I stood, gathering my bag, feeling the weight of it settle against my shoulder. "Good," I said. "It's outdated." The guard by the door stepped aside, letting me pass first. The hallway felt longer than I remembered, but the air was lighter. Colleagues peeked from cubicles as I walked by, half whispers, half awe. A few nodded. One mouthed, "Welcome back." I didn't smile, not fully, but I let the corner of my mouth rise just enough. In the lobby, sunlight streamed through the glass atrium, catching in the company's etched mission statement. Integrity starts with action. I almost laughed. For the first time, it actually meant something. My phone buzzed again. A new message. This one from an internal system tagged Legacy Oversight. Trust reinstated. Client retained. Revenue secured. I looked at the screen for a long second before sliding it into my blazer pocket. Outside, The Florida air was hot and electric. I walked toward the parking lot, the reflection of the glass doors shrinking behind me. They'd tried to make me a warning. Instead, I'd become the claws they forgot to fear. And I didn't need to say a single word to make sure they'd never forget it.